Hello Year 7, this is Mr. Palmer. This is your fourth and final lesson for this term in English, which is going to be your creative writing assessment. So this is for the week beginning Monday the 18th of May 2020, and I will talk you through everything you need to do to complete your assessment in this video. Reminder, our scheme of learning is about creative writing, experiencing other cultures. Our big question for the term has been, how do writers present various places around the world? And our learning paths skills have been skill 8 and skill 9, and also skill 10. And because this is your assessment, we're going to be concentrating on all three of those today, but with more of a focus on 8 and 9 because they've been the ones we've been looking at over the past 2 weeks. We've been doing work on sentences as well, but 8 and 9 are the main two. If you need a reminder and you want to have a look at what you should be doing at the moment, please pause now and have a look at your learning path. And here is a reminder of the vocabulary words for this term, should you be able to use any of those in today's writing. And a reminder of the language techniques that we are looking at this term. So simile, semantic field, metaphor, and personification. So this is the first part of your assessment. I'm going to take you through the whole assessment in this video lesson, and there are lots of different parts to it, including planning. So it's important that you don't just go off and sort of do it after seeing this slide. The important thing is that you follow along with the video, you do all the different stages, and you make sure that you've done everything you can to the best of your ability before submitting it. So your assessment is going to be to write 2 paragraphs of descriptive writing inspired by the photographs on the slides that follow. So inspired, we need to bear in mind that there's a couple of pitfalls there. One thing is you don't really want to write a story, you're writing description. So don't write lots of different action going on and speech and dialogue and stuff like that. But the other thing is you don't want to just describe the photos. This photo is of this, this, and this. You're writing a description. And let's have a quick look at the success criteria. So you need to make sure your writing has a distinct tone. You need to use at least one semantic field in each paragraph. You need to use at least 2 similes in your writing. You need to use at least 2 metaphors in your writing. You need to use personification at least 2 times in your writing. And here's the sort of extra ones here that are central to any piece of writing assessment, that you need to use a range of vocabulary, preferably this term's vocabulary words. You need to pay attention to your sentence types, and you need to pay attention to your punctuation. These ones up here are your main success criteria. And you'll notice that although I've said 1 semantic field in each paragraph, with the simile, metaphor, and personification, I haven't said you need to use 1 simile in each paragraph or anything like that. And the reason is because it might not fit with each paragraph. This is your writing. I want you to use 2 similes at some point in your writing, but you might find that actually you want to use them in 1 sentence, or you want to space them out across 2 paragraphs, or you want to use them in your first or your second. The same with the metaphors and the personification. So I'm leaving that up to you, because otherwise I don't want this to become a checklist. I've done a simile in my first paragraph, I've done a simile in my second paragraph. So it's important that you understand that these need to be in your writing, but it's up to you where you place them. Again, I'll take you through how we're going to do that. Part 2 of your assessment, and this is as important as part 1, is going to be self-assessing your work, either by highlighting or annotating it to show where you have met the success criteria. And it's important that you're not to submit your assessments until you're absolutely certain, by doing this self-assessment, that you have done everything you need to do in that writing. And then part 3 is going to be to submit it. Now you're going to do this via Show My Homework, and it's going to go to your teacher who's going to mark it and give you feedback on it. It could either be a photograph if you've been writing this stuff down by hand. You can just take a photo of it and upload it. Or obviously if you've done it on a computer, you could upload it onto Show My Homework. But it must be uploaded onto Show My Homework for your teacher to mark. That's the way it needs to be submitted. So here's your first picture. And if you want to pause here and take in some of the details in the picture. I'll obviously be attaching the PowerPoint to the homework, so you can look at it as you go through. And we'll be looking at the picture again as we go through as well. So that's a sort of wide shot of lots of people at the Kumbh festival. So celebrating and washing themselves in the water. And our second photo, so your second paragraph, is a bit more of a close-up picture of this man again celebrating the water, and you can see he's flicking the water around with his hair. So that's your two photographs to describe, to write descriptions inspired by in your assessment. So I'm now going to take you through the planning. And as I've said in previous lessons, planning is a really, really important and vital part of any piece of creative writing you do. So I'm going to be asking you to submit your planning document as well as your actual writing to your teacher so that they can see that you've been through both stages. So there is a planning document attached to the homework if you want to download and print it. If not, you can draw this table. This is for the first bit, which is when we're going to be planning the tone, the semantic fields, and then there's another one for planning the use of the figurative language techniques. So if you need to draw this, please pause and draw it now. And then we'll move on. And here's a waggle just to show you. This is based around the paragraphs I wrote about Marrakesh. So to show you exactly the kind of thing I'm looking for you to do in this waggle, in your planning. So you're going to make a little note of what the tone of your piece is. So if you remember my Marrakesh paragraphs, there was a sort of tone of awe and wonder, and some of the words or phrases I used. Your semantic field for paragraph 1 and some of the words you use for that, and your semantic field for paragraph 2 and some of the words you use there. You see, it's quite a sparse document. There's just ideas here. You're not writing out the whole thing. You're just putting your ideas down so that when you come to write your final piece, you have all that stuff done. So there's your waggle for that one. So let's start off with tone. So the tone is the feelings and emotion a piece of writing evokes in the reader, or the mood of the reader. And I've given you a bit of background information. I know lots of you will have done the extension work last week and researched this, but in case you need a reminder, the Kumbh is an important religious festival which is attended by tens of millions of Hindu worshippers every few years. They bathe in the waters at significant religious sites in order to cleanse themselves of sins and celebrate their culture, community, and traditions in huge fairs on the banks of the rivers. So that's what happens at this festival. So knowing you're looking at pictures of people at these festivals attended by so many people every few years. It's not a regular time between them because it depends on all sorts of different factors. But they have to be 4 every 12 years. And so what tone do you think would be appropriate for this piece of writing you're going to write about this? So the first thing I want you to do in your box 1 for tone is, what do you think the tone should be? So you can just write a couple of words. If you remember in the past, I want to put awe and wonder. So what do you think the tone for your piece of writing should be? So I'll just let you pause there and do that. And if you're back now, once you've written down your tone, slightly harder is to maybe write down some words or phrases you think you could use to achieve this tone. You might find as you work through, you'll find yourself going back to add more, and that's absolutely fine as well. But if you want to pause now and do some of those. So that's the tone taken care of. So if we move on to semantic field, as you know, semantic field is a group of words that relate to a single subject. So for picture 1, which is your first paragraph, excuse me, picture 1, which is your first paragraph, which is this lots and lots of people here all swimming about in the water. The first thing I want you to think of for box 1, what semantic field are you going to use in this paragraph? Some suggestions. I would think maybe semantic fields about number because there's so many people there, excitement or happiness or water. All sorts of options there, or you could use your own. I'll let you pause there and think about that. And then once you've thought of your semantic field for box one, again, just some words jotted down in that box that you can come back to later to make sure you're putting them throughout your writing. And pause there and think about those. So if we have a look at picture 2, which is the close-up of the man flicking his hair. So again, what semantic field do you think you could use in this paragraph? Pause here and have a think about that. And then once you've done that, what words could you use to make sure you're using that semantic field throughout your paragraph? If you pause there. Right, so now we've thought about tone and vocabulary in semantic field, you should have something that looks a little like this that you can work off when you go to write your 2 paragraphs. And now we're going to move on to writing about the figurative language. And your planning document for this, again, that's on the planning document if you're able to print it. If not, if you can draw a table like this one. Again, notice it's not paragraph 1 and 2, it's just 1 simile, 2 simile. You have an idea here in the middle and then you use it in a sentence. It's going to be exactly how we did it with the pictures from Day of the Dead. So I'll let you pause there and draw that one. If you've gone, oh, sorry. Of course, there's my waggle there for you to have a look at. So these are all ones I used in the Day of the Dead. Remember, those first ideas are very, very small, normally 3 words. I think only this one here actually is 4 words. So they're all 3 words. Just the idea. What is the idea of the simile? And then when I've gone through to using it in a sentence, I've beefed that up by having maybe some adjectives here, some different clauses, expanding on the idea. So the first idea is just what is the simile? The teeth are like gravestones. And then I'm using it in a sentence. How do I actually write it out? So it's 2 stages for each one of those. Let's start with similes. So I've shown you both pictures because it's your choice if you want to do 2 from one picture or 1 from each, or however you want to do it, so long as you do 2 similes. Reminder that simile is when you say it's like or as, big or mean as something. So it's a comparison using like or as. So the first thing is to pause, have a look at the pictures. You might want to have a look at on the PowerPoint if you can and look at them closer. Choose 2 things you want to write about. I'll pause. Once you've chosen your 2 things, you need to decide what you're going to compare them to and write those basic similes in the first box, like tourists, like vultures. I'll let you pause there and think of those 2 similes you're going to use. And once you've done that, a bit more work, try and write them up as full sentences. Try to make sure at least one of them has got multi-clauses there so that you can make sure your writing is more engaging and more varied than if you just wrote in single clause sentences. And then we will move on from similes to metaphor. Metaphor is the same thing, really. It's a comparison, but you do not use like or as. You just say that it is. Again, you can choose however you want to do that. So choose 2 elements. I'll let you pause there. In box 1, you're going to write them as basic metaphors. So this is this, or walls are monuments is my example there. And then in box 2, you're going to write those up as full sentences so they're ready to go straight into your writing when you're ready to do it. So I'll let you pause there and do that. And then finally, your personification. It's come off the edge of the screen here, but it's when you give an object human features, characteristics, or behaviors in order to create or emphasize an idea or an image. So the first thing is you need to choose something from these pictures that you could give human characteristics to. Obviously, there's a lot of people in these pictures, so you're going to have to look around. There's lots of sort of buildings here. There's obviously a lot of water around. This water here in this picture is behaving differently to this water, so there's various ideas you could use there. Those buildings in the background, this tent here, maybe even the wires. So 2 elements. I'll let you pause there. And once you've just chosen those 2 elements, you use to write basic personifications of those elements. So sky is threatening was the example from Day of the Dead. Basic 3-word idea. And once you've done that, you're going to write those up as full sentences. So again, a multi-clause sentence for at least one of them if you can. I'll let you pause there and complete your work on personification. And that should be a completed figurative part of your planning document. So you should now have 2 sections of the planning document, one for the tone, vocabulary, and semantic field, and one for the simile, metaphor, and personification. So that should basically mean you're ready to go. You've got a lot of sentences already written here. You've got your idea of vocabulary you want to use from your first paragraph, from your first bit of planning. It's now time to write it as 2 paragraphs. So just a reminder of what my success criteria are, what your success criteria are even. You need to make sure your writing has a distinct tone. You need to use 1 semantic field per paragraph. You need to use 2 similes at some time in your writing. You need to use 2 metaphors at some time in your writing. You need to use personification at least twice in your writing. And then you need to be paying attention to vocabulary, range of sentence types, and range of punctuation as well. So this might be a long pause, or you might even want to turn off and come back to this later if you've got all your planning ready, or go back and look over some parts of the video. But if you pause here, and that's time to write your 2 paragraphs, and then when you're ready to come back, I'll show you exactly how to self-assess your work and how we're going to post it. So I'll let you pause there. Now, hopefully it's been a while since you last heard my voice, so welcome back. And let me take you through the self-assessment part. So we're going to self-assess your work by highlighting or annotating to show where you have met the success criteria. Now, if you've got enough highlighter colors to have a different color for each of the success criteria, and you want to do it like that, so you've got your similes in red and your semantic field in green and your personification in yellow. If you have highlighters to do that, that's fine. Can you please just make sure you've also included a key as to what colors mean what. But if, like me, most of you don't have hundreds of highlighters lying around, you can do this part by either underlining your work. It'd be better if you used a different color to the one you wrote in. So underlining or boxing the parts of your work that are important, and then drawing a line from those boxes. And I'll show you how I want you to annotate them so that when your teacher's looking at this, they can see you've self-assessed your work. So when you've used vocabulary that was the vocabulary you chose to create your tone, I want you to label that with a T. So you're going to draw a box around it or underline it in a different color. You're going to draw a line into your margin and you're going to write a T. Or if you can write small enough, you could just write a little T above the word. That's fine. So tone is going to be self-assessed using a T. I'll let you pause there and do that. So the next thing to self-assess is your use of semantic field. You're going to use the letter F to do that. You can't use S because that's for simile. So F, again, either you can box and do it in the margin, you can write it above. So long as it's legible, that's absolutely fine. I'll let you pause there and highlight your semantic field words. Next up, I want you to self-assess your similes. There's the S look. So when you've used similes, I want you to either highlight them in the chosen color, do an S in the margin, write a little S above them. Show off to your teacher where you've used your similes. I'll let you pause there. Next up is metaphors. So you're going to use an M to do the same thing as you've done with everything else so far. And finally, your personification, you're going to label with a P. Now, pause there and do that. Now, before I look at the other success criteria, this next part's very important. If you don't have at least 2 S's in your work right now, or 2 M's, or 2 P's, and you don't have several T's and several F's in each paragraph, that means you haven't been successful in your work. So you need to go back and plan and maybe write that up again. It's vitally important that you know that the work you've handed into your teacher is the best possible work you can do and has met those success criteria. So if you haven't done these things, you need to go back and do them and then come back and self-assess again. So once you've done all that self-assessment, there are the other 3 criteria that count for any piece of writing. And if you want to have a look through, so the vocabulary words you'd be labeling with a V, your sentence types you'd be labeling with a T. Just do that for once for each sentence type. So if you've used a 1-clause sentence, put a T there. If you've used a multi-clause, put a T there. You don't have to label every single sentence. Just show me where you varied your sentences. And again, with your punctuation, I don't need an N every time you've used a full stop, but if you've used anything interesting in your punctuation, maybe some brackets or a semicolon or some interesting way to end your sentences, then you can label those with an N. So that should be your self-assessment done. Reminder that you should be able to see at least all of these on that self-assessment sheet. And the last thing for you to do then is to upload your work, which is both the assessment and your planning documents, to show my homework for your teacher to mark. So if you've handwritten it, a photograph of that is fine. If you've done it on a computer, you can upload the document and make sure it must go to show my homework. Do not email it to your teacher because show my homework allows us to mark all the work together. So it needs to come into show my homework. Thank you very much, Year 7, and have a wonderful half term, and there'll be another lesson when you get back. Goodbye now.